I declare the Ordinary Council meeting of the 19th of March 2024 held in Council Chambers at Level 2, 388 Hayes Street, Subiaco, open at 5:32 p.m. Welcome councillors, welcome staff and welcome members of the gallery. On behalf of the City of Subiaco, I acknowledge the Whadjuk Noongar people as the traditional custodians of the land on which we're meeting this evening. Okay, attendances. We've got one councillor on approved leave of absence, and that is Councillor White. All other councillors are present in person and accounted for. We've got one acting director at the moment, I think. Yep. The acting director corporate service at the moment is Elizabeth Connolly, but the remainder of the executive leadership team are all here ready to assist. Oh, what did I say? Yep. Yeah, so just to confirm, it's Acting Director Development Services that we've got supplementing the ELT. Okay, we've got a few leave of absence requests. We'll begin with Councillor Russell Jones seeking leave of absence for the period 20 May to the 31st of May 2024. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the application? Councillor De Vries moving, Councillor Kosovich seconding, and we'll be voting with buttons this evening. Okay, there's a software problem. I can't see what the votes are.
Should we go to voting to hang?
Right, we'll take that vote by show of hands anyway. All those in favour? Okay, Councillor Jones's leave is carried unanimously. Councillor Jones's.
Sorry, Mayor, I also got a leave of absence request.
Okay, we'll deal with another one from Councillor Jones for the period from 22 July to the 2nd of August 2024 inclusive. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that period, please? Councillor Kosovich moving, Councillor O'Connor seconding. All those in favour? Okay, that period of leave is approved unanimously as well. Councillor Kosovich, what are your dates that you're seeking leave for?
Thank you, Mayor. The 9th of September through to the 4th of October inclusive. Thank you.
CEO wants to know if that's 2024 you're talking about. Yep. Can I have a mover and a seconder for Councillor Kosovich's leave application? Councillor Jones moving, Councillor Johnston seconding. All those in favour? That leave is carried unanimously as well. Okay, one more application and I've submitted it. I'm seeking leave for the 16th of April, the 23rd of April and the 25th of April 2024. Can I have a mover and a seconder for my leave? Councillor Kosovich moving, Councillor Burns seconding. It looks like our voting system's back online, so I'll call the vote now. Okay, that leave is carried unanimously as well. Right, moving through the agenda, disclosure of interest. Are there any disclosures this evening? It doesn't look like it. There were no questions previously taken on notice, so we'll move into tonight's public question time. We've got a few submitted in relation to C2, so we'll begin with Leonie Forrest of Morgan Street, Shenton Park. Some questions on C2. Okay. Okay, if she hasn't Yeah, okay. If she hasn't organised for anyone to read on her behalf, we'll probably just skip it. Okay. All right, we'll move on to Ken Mulvaney of Morgan Street, Shenton Park. Question on C2. Use the microphone just so that people watching online can follow.
I see. Right. Sorry. I've not done this before, so I don't know the protocols. I presume I'm just reading out what you've already got in front of you. All right. I am genuinely concerned about the impact of the proposed modifications to Evans Street will have on the adjacent streets. I require the Council to take immediate mitigative action when any increase to traffic usage, noise levels or safety risk occurs on any of the nearby streets. The Council must guarantee they will take direct and urgent action to ascertain current data to inform on the adverse impacts of the proposed Evans Street changes. Will the Council confirm these undertakings?
Director Technical Services.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Mulvaney. So yes, in response to your question, the City will undertake traffic monitoring before and after the project, should it proceed to construction.
Thank you, Director. And a more complete answer might have noted that Councillor Powell submitted an amendment to the relevant item, which I think would formalise that intent. Okay, we've got a question from Dagmar no, we don't. A question from Dagmar Barnes of Morgan Street, Shenton Park. A question on C2.
I and many of the residents in the area we're talking about are very disappointed that it's going ahead because there has been minimal consultation with the residents in Shenton Park, and we will be very much affected. Before I give the question, I've got my own ideas of what's happening because there's congestion at where Railway Parade and Nicholson Road meet. Always there are long queues, particularly at 8 in the afternoon. Now, the traffic avoids that by coming down Herbert Street and then turning up Morgan Street or Wayland Street so that they bypass those lights. And because it has to be something like that, because the cars come through rather quickly for such a small street. So what traffic calming measures will be implemented on Fortune and Morgan, which is where I'm affected, but Fortune and Wayland also are affected, to ensure safe traffic flow? There are children on scooters and all sorts of things in that area, and it's a bit dicey. And if we're going to get increased traffic, we've got too much traffic already, so it's something will have to be done. And I just ask the traffic that if this is a foregone conclusion, then please can you do something about calming down the traffic so that we don't have dangerous traffic coming through.
Okay, thank you. I think the question, as I understand it, is what traffic calming measures will be implemented on Fortune and Morgan Streets to ensure safe traffic flow. Director Technical Services.
Thank you for your question. So the City has provided several opportunities for community input during the feasibility and concept design stages of the project, with 3 workshops held and 237 responses received. As is standard practice for the City, first traffic monitoring will be undertaken to ascertain if there are any changes to traffic on the surrounding streets, like Fortune and Morgan Street, if this project proceeds. And this traffic data from this monitoring will, along with other criteria such as crash data and road design elements, will be used to assess whether some form of intervention is warranted, and if so, to what extent.
Thank you. Okay, we've got some questions on C4 now, submitted by Jackie Greenshields of Salisbury Street, Subiaco.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors and staff. The city is very proud of its heritage, and this is evident by the growing number of heritage areas. In the preliminary design brief, it states that a design principle acknowledges the site's past, present and future, but none of the 124-year-old municipal gardens history has been documented in the brief or been provided to councillors or the community. Will the city update the draft design brief before going to tender to reflect and include the 124-year-old cultural and social history of the Subiaco Municipal Gardens through a professional heritage consultant report, and also ensure the Norfolk pines are not the only significant trees registered for protection, as there are many other palms and trees grown in this area from our own nurseries that are well over 100 years old? And what is the process for the city to list the 124-year-old municipal gardens as a heritage area or on the heritage list? And can this be done before or in conjunction with the redevelopment?
Thank you. I'll ask Director Corporate Services to answer questions 1A and B before we move on to question 2. Director.
Thank you, Presiding Member. A few interesting questions there. So the design brief is not intended to be a comprehensive listing of all the information relevant to the redevelopment of 241 Rockaby Road. Rather, it provides design principles which each require further research and information in order to meet. So it would be anticipated that the prospective architect would work with the city to ensure that they have a strong understanding of the site's history, as well as the trees and gardens in the area, in meeting the following design principles. Firstly, to acknowledge the site's past, present and future, and secondly, to promote the natural environment and open space. One of the things that they might like to get familiar with is the city's local heritage survey, which recognises several places in the area as having heritage significance, including Rankin Gardens and the Norfolk Pines, and in particular the whole of the broader civic and cultural precinct, described as being bound by Rockaby Road, Hammersley Road, Hensman Road and Bagot Road, is described as a place of exceptional heritage significance. The survey doesn't provide statutory protection to places, but it does assist council in making decisions in harmony with cultural heritage values. In addition, the city is currently reviewing the Subiaco Activities Centre Plan, which is inclusive of the municipal gardens area. This will include consideration of places worthy of further heritage protections and will include consultation with the community, so there'll be further opportunity for input. There's another point within your question around significant trees. So in the design brief, the term significant tree is used in accordance with the language in the city's local planning scheme, whereby trees listed on the significant tree register are afforded additional protection. This certainly doesn't mean that other trees on the site are not also worthy of retention. The design brief states that the retention of non-significant trees should be maximised and that the urban forest should be preserved and promoted. As noted in the agenda report, there'll be multiple opportunities for further community input into the redevelopment of the site before the design is finalised.
Your second question, Ms Greenshields.
Thank you. The current council chambers are built within the Subiaco's municipal gardens. The footprint of the new development should not encroach upon any more open garden space than it currently does. Such a redevelopment has the potential to reduce our community's municipal gardens by allowing developments to go within 6 metres of the footpath, in line with the library. Will the city remove the clause which gives architects the ability to build to the same alignment as the Subiaco Library, which would greatly reduce the size of the socially and culturally historic municipal gardens? Thank you.
Thank you. Director Corporate Services.
Thank you, presiding member. So the design brief provides for a minimum setback of 6 metres, but that doesn't mean that the design will necessarily have a setback of 6 metres, noting that the current building has a setback of around 25 metres. And it also certainly doesn't mean that the building will take up all available space to that point. So the design principles state that the redevelopment will maximise garden streetscapes and open spaces for the benefit of the community, and the architect should be guided by that in their design. There'll be multiple further opportunities as detail unfolds for further community input into the redevelopment before the design is finalised as well.
Okay, that's the end of public question time. Okay, we've got a question on C2 from someone who I think who's now here to read it, Leonie Forrest of Morgan Street, Shenton Park. Question on C2. 2 questions on C2.
Thank you. I apologise for not being here earlier if I've missed my time. It's a bit crowded to get through the city on peak hour this time. So my name's Leonie Forrest. I reside at 26 Morgan Street, which is on the corner of the northwest corner of Morgan Street and Fortune Street. My question is in relation to agenda item C2, the Evans Street to Keatley Road Safe Active Street project. Just read out my first question. So my first question is, in the event the project is approved, what arrangements would be put in place to monitor the increased traffic flow to the surrounding streets, in particular Morgan Street, because that's the street I live on, noting that, as I understand it, any research regarding traffic flow was carried out during the COVID period?
Maybe just read your second question as well and we'll deal with them both at the same time.
Thank you. In the event the project is approved, what proposals are there to mitigate the increased traffic flow to surrounding streets, in particular Morgan Street, which invariably will occur due to the Evans Street traffic calming measures, for example, decreased speed limits or stop signs, further traffic calming measures on Fortune Street and or Morgan Street, noting that, again, the research regarding that traffic flow was carried out during the COVID period. Thank you.
Director of Technical Services.
Thank you for your questions, Leonie. So in response to your first question, the city has been collecting traffic data in the area for 20 years, beyond just this project. And as you know, there have been counts that have been done in both 2020 and also 2022. The city ensures that the traffic is collected at suitable times to account for prevailing conditions and would undertake further traffic monitoring before and after the project should it proceed to construction. And this would include parallel streets such as Morgan Street and Onslow Road. In response to your second question, the city uses a range of options in accordance with its traffic management intervention protocol. This protocol assesses a series of criteria such as speed, volumes, crash data, and road design in accordance with Australian standards to determine whether some form of intervention is warranted and to what extent. This evidence-based approach would be used for the surrounding streets if the project proceeds. And as the Mayor's alluded to, there is an amendment that would look to formalise this and also bring back a report to Council following that investigation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's the end of public question time. We'll move on to public statements now. We'll begin with a statement from Peter Chow of Morgan Street, Shenton Park on C2. Mr. Chow.
Hello. Yeah, in hindsight, I should have framed my question, my statement as a question. But in any case, the contents will be the same. I'd like to add my disappointment to Dharma that the project is for the safe active street is proceeding with minimal consultation, and for would there be a post-project report for accountability to taxpayers and ratepayers and adversely impacted residents, and describing the anticipated usage of the new bike paths and walkers, and also the diverted traffic flows need to be monitored over a reasonable and representative period of time, for instance, a few months, to validate whether the actual typical usage of the new cycle paths and walk paths justify its existence, and also the concomitant traffic disruptions to nearby streets. And also for transparency, these traffic usage reports must be based on established traffic engineering principles and verifiable data, not subjective and arbitrary sentiments, and must be made public to affected local residents. As we know, traffic management is a zero-sum game, meaning that the project that's currently called the Evans Street Safe Active Project, I think some words, especially our neighbors along Morgan Street, would prefer it to be called the Morgan Street Rumbling and Unsafe Thoroughfare Project. Thank you.
Thank you for the statement. We've got another statement from Josephine McPhee of Morgan Street, Shen Park.
Good evening. My name's Josephine McPhee from 15 Morgan Street in Park. My item is for Agenda C2. I am concerned there will be an increase in traffic along Morgan Street and Wayland Roads as a direct result of the traffic calming and other measures in Evans Street, west of Herbert Road, section of the proposed Safe Active Street project. It is critical that comparable before and after measurements are taken on daily vehicle traffic movement along the streets parallel to Evans Street from the period before implementation and for the period following implementation of the SAS. These baseline traffic measurements will be needed to inform any debate about remediation measures in the event our worst fears are realised and there is a material adverse impact on traffic in the neighbouring streets. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And another statement on C2 from Glenda Kay of Morgan Street, Shenton Park. Okay, and councillors, there was a late statement on C2 which I've circulated to you by email as well, and I'll just say that was from someone who's got lived experience with safe and unsafe streets. So I hope you'll just read that and take it on board. The final statement for this evening is a statement on C4 submitted by Jackie Greenshields of Salisbury Street, Subiaco. Ms. Greenshields.
Good evening, Mayor, staff and councillors. Just briefly, I've just looked up the local planning scheme 5 for the significant tree register, and I don't see any of the trees in the municipal gardens listed, so I'm wondering whether that could be taken on notice to be checked. I know there was recommendations on the Heritage website that years ago we should have got some arborists in to assess the trees in that area, and I don't believe that was ever done, and that was many years ago. So I am concerned that there is, at least it's on council land at the moment.
Okay, one of the directors will take that on board, and we know how to contact you, so we'll get you an answer.
Thank you. So this is a little bit of a double up, but bear with me. In the design brief, it states, retain all significant trees on site, ensuring appropriate separation is achieved, maximise retention of non-significant trees on site, and support and replacement of any trees proposed for removal. This is a very vague brief to architects and gives the community or councillors no idea or confidence about what is considered significant or non-significant, especially if they're not registered. The obvious significant trees are the Norfolk pines, but there are many other palms and trees that are significant and well over 100 years old, as can be seen in the historic photos I have provided to all councillors in my submission today. You may not have had time, but there was 20 pages of photographs from heritage sites and our museum. I believe the whole of the municipal gardens should be protected by listing the municipal gardens in a heritage area or placed on the heritage list. This report would include the age and history of every palm tree, Norfolk pine and other mature trees, and the cultural and social significance of the garden. Currently, we have very, very little documented on the garden's history. The Subiaco Municipal Garden is of exceptional significance, exhibiting aesthetic, historic and social themes and values. It is an example of a public garden in very good condition, retaining its original site and principal landscape elements. Since its opening in 1900, it has been highly valued by the community as a place of aesthetic delight and tranquility, and as a preferred venue for important public and private occasions. It has been associated with themes relating from the early 1900s, World War I, World War II, ceremonies, gardening, early Subiaco nurseries and plant breeding, social gatherings, sport, croquet and bowls was there, coronations, famous horticulturalists, prominent people of the day and entertainment.
You might just need to press your button again to keep going.
The Municipal Gardens is a landmark site within the city, and it has contributed to the sense of place through its citizens and visitors from 1900 to the present. With a new generation of young families in the city and next to the Subiaco Primary School, it is important that we officially record its history and preserve what little open space we have left in the city. The municipal gardens should not be reduced in size just to accommodate a council and admin building. I strongly urge the city and the council to ensure that this historic municipal garden is listed as one of our important heritage areas or placed on the heritage list to ensure that its history and abundance of 100-year-old trees and palms are not lost in what is now called the civic precinct, a label that many in the community do not really want or had no say in. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to the end of public statements. We'll move on to petitions and approved deputations, and I have received a petition this week. I've received a petition regarding the Evans Street Safe Active Street project. I haven't counted them myself, but governance tells me there's 43 signatures on this petition submitted by lead petitioner Josephine McPhee, and the petition states, "We, the undersigned, are concerned residents who urge the City of Subiaco to protect Morgan Street and Wayland Road from any increased traffic resulting from the proposed Safe Active Street project for Evans Street. In advance of construction of the Safe Active Street project for Evans Street, we require written confirmation that the City has the power to and will put in traffic calming measures to negate any increase in traffic in Morgan Street and Wayland Road that may be caused by the Safe Active Street project for Evans Street." So that's been formally submitted to the City. It's been formally received and tabled, so I don't think we need to vote to accept it. We'll take that as received. Okay, confirmation of minutes of previous meetings. I've got a single set of minutes to confirm, and they're the minutes of the Ordinary Council meeting of the 20th of February 2024. Can I have a mover and a seconder to accept those minutes? Councillor De Vries moving, Councillor Kosovich seconding. I'll call the vote. Okay, those minutes are accepted unanimously. We'll move on to announcements now, and I've got a couple. The first is that I'm pleased to say I opened an international sporting tournament on the weekend. I'm talking about the Trans-Tasman Petanque Tournament, hosted at the City of Subiaco Petanque Club, which is located adjacent to the Palms Community Centre. The tournament alternates between Australia and New Zealand annually, and from what I gathered, most of Australia's team had actually travelled from interstate to participate in this competition, so it was a pretty diverse group of competitors. The tournament was first held in Melbourne in 2003, where Australia was successful, and since that time I understand New Zealand have had a slight advantage, which I take to mean they've beaten us more times than we've beaten them. But according to the Secretary of the Baton Club, this is the first time this prestigious tournament's ever been held in Western Australia, and they are extremely proud that the City of Subiaco and their club had been accorded this honour. So I was pleased to join them for that. The other announcement is to acknowledge the formal launch of Artform. It's this nicely produced, high production value publication that the City of Subiaco has formally launched at an event last week. Titled Artform Subiaco, it includes special features about newly commissioned public artworks visible in the heart of Subiaco and stories about creators who call the city home, as well as interviews with artists and business owners who enrich Subiaco. Myself and some colleagues from council and a number of staff were pleased to join a launch event at the Orangery Gallery in Shenton Park last week, where a number of stakeholders were invited and received a copy of the publication, previewed the gallery's latest exhibition, and received live entertainment from a West Australian Symphony Orchestra harpist. So well done to the staff who've worked on that publication and who put on a very successful launch event. A number of us are still receiving emails from the guests complimenting the City of Subiaco. So well done to all involved. Right, we'll continue moving through the agenda, and I think we're just about ready to move on to the agenda items. Okay, for the information of those watching, there's a number of agenda items contained in the agenda which we're proposing to pass en bloc because no amendments or alternative motions have been submitted by councillors. So at present, councillors, the possible en bloc vote would consist of items AR1, AR2, C1 and C6. Does anyone want to remove any of those items from the en bloc vote? Okay, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder for the en bloc motion. Councillor Jones moving. Councillor Kosovich seconding. I'll call the vote. Okay, the en bloc items carried unanimously, and just to confirm, that means that those 4 items have been carried as recommended and reported by staff without debate. Councillors, now we'll move on to the remaining agenda items, and that brings us to C2, the Evans Street to Keatley Road Safe Active Street project. We've got the officer recommendation to proceed with the project and an amendment submitted by Councillor Powell. I'll start by looking for a mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation on C2. Councillor De Vries moving, Councillor Kosovich seconding. Councillor De Vries.
Thank you for the community coming in and speaking to us tonight, and you can hear from various people really, serious concerns about the impact that this might have. So despite this, I still support the officer's recommendations for the Evans to Keatley Road Safe Active Street project. Given that it aligns with the Department of Transport's long-term cycle network and has been given significant funding from the WA Bicycle Network and DOT, I see, while there are concerns, I see no actual reason to oppose it. Given that we do have an amendment tonight as well, that does reassure me. The vision of the Department of Transport is reasonable in that it aims to promote riding or walking to school. The report that fewer Australian children walk and bike ride to school than ever before in the report aptly named the declining rate of walking and cycling to school in Perth. This report creates opportunities and recommendations. It notes that over the past 40 years, the national rate of active travel to school has declined from 75% to 25%. In Perth, the rate is as low as 20%, and 1/2 of children travel to school by car despite living less than 1 kilometre away. Many of us can probably testify to the frustration and annoyance of doing school drops in heavy traffic, and that's increasingly so at Shenton College with the development at Montario Quarter, and it's likely to get worse. School car trips in Perth produce an estimated 386,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide per year. With growing inner city schools, and Shenton is now in excess of 2,800 students, it is untenable for all parents to do the school drop-off. Creating safe, active streets is just an absolute must, and we should do this, not only because we've been offered a portion of that $275 million allocated for this project, but because it's the right thing to do. We know that if we refuse the funding that's been offered, it might not come again. Recognising that no solution is a perfect one, but not trying to create one, allows the wicked problem to continue. Healthy, active streets are a must for the future health of our children and for creating lifelong healthy habits. With the various traffic calming measures along the full length of Keighley and Evans with a fairly direct route to Shenton College, it can only be hoped that behaviour can change when parents feel confident that there is an increased level of road safety. Those of you who grew up at a time when walking to school was the norm are probably or have been reluctant to send children to school by foot or bike due to really legitimate safety concerns. A safer road may help to change this, or with the amendment raised by Councillor Powell, which seems consistent with the officer's intention, I would hope that gives reassurance to residents living in adjoining streets, in particular Morgan and Wayland. So creating a safe corridor for our young people to ride and walk to school is absolutely a priority, in my opinion. I urge other councillors to support this recommendation and would welcome the amendment from Councillor Powell.
Councillor Kosovich.
Thank you, Mayor. I too would like to say that I support Councillor Powell's amendment, and I would like to also acknowledge the Shenton Park residents who have come here this evening. In supporting the officer recommendations for the Evans Street to Keighley Road Safe Active Street project, I advise as follows. Due to having been a resident in Shenton Park in years past, I'm familiar with the suburb's topography and the impacted roads and streets. I have also visited the area recently and personally reviewed the planned design changes to convert these local streets into shared space environments aimed at making them more accessible and attractive for all road users, including cyclists and pedestrians. Suffice to say, I did not observe anything untoward in my reconnaissance of the affected streets. Significant outcomes from the officer recommendation include the City appointed 3 design consultants to conduct an independent review of the design concept. The City appointed Glenford Group in June 2023, who were required to undertake the detailed design and required to submit drawings at the 15%, 50%, 85% and 100% design stages for review. Main Roads WA were separately consulted at the 15% design review stage. As a consequence, Main Roads WA requested changes to the intersection design, specifically at the intersection of Evans Street and Excelsior Street, and the intersection of Excelsior Street with Keighley Road to improve the safety of these intersections. These changes have been made to the design brief. An independent road safety audit was conducted at the 85% design stage, with no design change recommendations identified. I do understand the concerns of some residents that there may be a displacement effect with increased traffic on some roads and side streets in Shenton Park. However, I am more than confident these traffic impacts will be minimal, and the City's technical services staff, together with Main Roads WA and the Department of Transport, will remain alert to any adverse impact on traffic flows and will be able to accommodate these issues if and when they arise. In conclusion, let me simply say, as someone who has attended countless serious and fatal traffic crashes in my former role as a career police officer, that these safer active street project changes will make it safer and potentially will save the lives of children riding their bikes to school. It will also give confidence to parents that the children have been well catered for by the state government, working in close collaboration with the City of Subiaco and making these carriageways safer and more user-friendly for pedestrians and cyclists alike, including e-bikes and e-scooters to travel on. It also presents an ideal opportunity for children, and adults for that matter, to have more active lives simply by not being dropped off and picked up from school, as opposed to riding their bikes or walking to school. I commend the officer recommendation to you.
Thank you. The amendment's been foreshadowed a number of times. Councillor Powell's amendment. Is there a seconder for the amendment which was submitted and published ahead of tonight's meeting? Councillor Johnston seconding. Councillor Powell.
Yes, thank you, and through you, Mayor. Look, firstly, I'd like to address the reasons for this proposed amendment. And it goes back to the first consultation processes. Excuse me for a second. First consultation processes when residents in the SAS area want to know what effect this plan was going to have on them. Particularly unpopular in those first consultations was the modal, which would have diverted traffic from the Evans-Fortune Street intersection onto neighbouring roads. And look, that certainly would have led to increased traffic on the neighbouring streets. That modal was dispensed with early on, and there were pledges that any adverse impacts from increased traffic flow on the neighbouring streets would be addressed by the city. At a council meeting in September 2022, those assurances were again publicly given by staff when council debated and then approved the drawing up of detailed engineering plans for the Evans-Keatley Road SAS. Now, those plans are before us tonight, and again there have been changes, in my view, for the better. Gone are the built-out pinch points that have been the bane of SASs in other areas. Now it's essentially a speed limit of 30 kilometres an hour and raised platforms, especially in the Evans Street section, and raised intersections, I suppose you'd say, throughout. The platforms themselves will be 75 mil high, but that rise will be graduated in over a metre. So staff say it'll be nothing like the big bumps outside the Shenton Park shopping centre. Maybe a tad bigger than the ones in Nicholson Road near Whole Foods, but not by much. The other point that they've made is that there won't be any loss of parking in Evans, Excelsior or Keatley Roads. And because of the removal of the planned pinch points, perhaps there might even be a couple more parking bays. Construction's likely to be over 6 months, with small sections done individually to minimise traffic disruption. So in my view, what we have now is a considerable improvement on what was first proposed. But as we've heard tonight, the residents on neighbouring roads are still worried about the effect this might have on traffic flows in their area. And as the petition signed by more than 40 Morgan Street residents shows, this is a real concern. So the missing link in this current officer recommendation is the council fulfilment of its promise to address the adverse impacts on neighbouring streets if they do end up with materially more traffic. Interestingly, there was only one complaint from the Excelsior Street section, and while there aren't any on that petition from Wayward, look, I know that there are concerned people there as well. So the amendment provides for traffic monitoring in the area before the commencement of construction, and that's to be taken during normal periods, not during school or public holidays. And a comparative study is to be taken after construction. So that means that there'll be a baseline for a like-to-like comparison of the effects on the traffic patterns in the area. And then a report is to be brought back to the council, and if there are adverse effects, a recommendation on how to address them. So this is really adding to the officer recommendation, the pledges that have already been made, but now they're in writing and added to the officer recommendation. Look, I'll probably have something more to say on the substantive motion after this, but that's the reason for supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnston, did you want to speak to the amendment?
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, look, I've just reinforced what Councillor Powell was saying. I think it's having a report, baseline report, comparative study afterwards. It gives the ability to review and assess the impact, which, robust monitoring. I think it's all just good practice. So it's something that we're doing anyway, and it just provides more transparency and responds to the community concerns. I think it's good practice and I support it.
Does anyone want to speak against or for the amendment? Okay, I'll call the vote on the amendment. The amendment's carried unanimously. So we'll now continue the debate on C2 as amended by Councillor Powell's amendment. Now on the substantive motion so far, we've heard from the mover and the seconder. So if there's anyone who wanted to speak against C2, I'd give them the opportunity now. Otherwise, we'll take speakers for or against. Okay, any speakers for? Councillor Powell.
Yeah, look, I might be putting my hand into the mouth of the tiger, but look, the other question that's been raised about safe, active streets is why have one and have one at all, and I think we need to answer that question as well. As has been pointed out, the state government's made it pretty clear it wants a network of bike paths and safe, active streets a part of that. And look, that's not just in Western Australia. It's being pursued by state governments in many parts of the country. They want to get people out of cars, and if you want to get them to use other forms of transport, you need to provide safe places for them to use other forms of transport. And in the government's messaging, I've got to say there's almost a veiled warning. You do it now, or in the future, we will do it for you. Personally, I prefer our community and our city engineers to come up with a plan rather than potentially some state government transport engineer who will simply look at a map, draw up a design and tell us what to do, modal filters and all. And it's not just about the cycling or the increasing use of e-bikes and e-scooters. There are other issues about getting people out of motor cars. To reduce transport emissions, Australia's transport industry needs to reduce emissions by 43% to meet the climate change targets that are only 6 years away. And look, it's a big ask to change behaviours, but every little tweak will help. It's also about livability. Getting people out of cars is about congestion busting. And we all know about how increasing vehicle traffic is clogging up our urban streets. But mostly it's about providing a safe environment for cyclists and the new wave of e-transport. And a final point, despite all the traffic calming, probably the biggest safety measure is the 30-kilometre speed limit. I think, as the Mayor mentioned, in fact, this afternoon received an email from a lady badly injured in a cycle accident with a car, injuries from which she still suffers, and she was pleading with us to support safe, active streets. At a recent transport seminar, I heard the fatality rate in car versus pedestrian at 60 kilometres an hour is 80%. At 30 kilometres an hour, it's about 15%. So with these protections in place with the amendment, I'm certainly happy to support this recommendation.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor De Vries, do you want to close?
I think it's really great that we acknowledge the community and we work with the community. And as Councillor Powell pointed out, if we don't voluntarily do this, it could be forced upon us. I also believe that change will be quick if people feel really confident in the initiative taken, and that's what we want. We want fewer cars near the school, because when there are more cars near the school, there's also an increased risk of accidents. And anybody who knows what that can be like, it's a nightmare. And I think that by reducing the number of cars that actually do the school drop-off, we're actually also having a positive spin-off. So I really am confident that this will be a positive outcome, but also should there be some rat running on those other roads, well, I think we will sensibly deal with that and make good choices, because I certainly wouldn't want to live on one of those streets either. So I do have empathy for the residents, but I know that that is something that we will sensibly deal with and make the right call there. So thank you all for speaking on this matter tonight. Thank you.
I'll call a vote. Okay, C2 is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to C3, approval to gazette our draft waste local law. This is not part of the en bloc vote that we did earlier because we need an absolute majority. So I'll seek a mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation. Councillor Burns moving. Councillor Powell seconding. Councillor Burns. Councillor Powell, did you wish to speak? Okay, look, I think there's probably not going to be any debate on this one because it's coming back on a technicality, so I think I'm going to call the vote on C3. Okay, C3 is carried unanimously. That brings us to C4, architectural procurement for the redevelopment of 241 Rockaby Road. We've got the officer recommendation on a procurement method. I've submitted a proposed amendment and Councillor Burns has submitted an alternative motion for an alternative form of procurement. I'll start by seeking a mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation.
Can I ask, could I raise one first, Mayor?
Question?
Well, yes, it is a question in a way. It's we received legal advice late this afternoon. I think it regards the amendment. Look, I only saw that we'd received that legal advice while I was waiting for a train at the train station, so I haven't had time to read or absorb it at all. So I'm wondering whether a short recess is appropriate to actually try and read the email or try and read the advice and assimilate it.
Yeah, look, that's fair. Now we can do this two ways, I suppose. We can close the meeting or we can do a short adjournment, but look, given that it's all accessible by via your emails, I think we'll just do a short adjournment.
I don't have it.
Okay. Well, look, I'll make sure you've all got a copy. I think it's probably better to adjourn and give you guys the opportunity to read than it is to go behind closed doors and progress the matter further. I think I can just adjourn, can't I, CEO? Yep, okay. It is 7.7. Well, look, just to be safe, I'll propose that the meeting now adjourn. For 15 minutes. So we'll come back at 6:39 p.m. Okay. So I'll take a vote on that just to be sure. A mover and a seconder for the procedural motion to adjourn for 15 minutes. Councillor Powell moving, Councillor Jones seconding. Okay, I'll call the vote on the procedural motion. Okay, the procedural motion's carried 7-1. So we'll adjourn for 15 minutes. We'll make sure everyone's got a copy of the advice and then we'll be back on at, I said 6:39, but we'll make it 6:40 p.m. Thanks, everyone. Okay, the meeting's back in session at 6:40 p.m. We're on to C4. We've got the officer recommendation, and I'll seek a mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation.
Procedural motion.
What's the procedural motion, Councillor Burns?
Under section 7.1A, the meeting proceeds to the next item of business. I'd like my opportunity to speak to it, please.
Well, you'll need a seconder for that first. Really? Okay. Speak to the procedural motion, Councillor Burns.
I haven't been able to go through it in the detail that I would like because I've only had it for several minutes. But two items immediately raise concern for me, and they throw doubt over the word. You know what I mean? It's not saying it's impossible by any means, okay? But it's saying the wording, right?
Hang on, Councillor Burns. If you're going to discuss the substance of legal advice, we're going to have to go behind closed doors.
Okay, well then I'll leave it at this. We've all read it, okay? I won't
Have you?
Pardon?
Have you read it?
Yes, it's right here in front of me.
Okay. I didn't
Okay.
see you do much reading, but go on.
Excuse me, would you like to apologise for that? Pardon? Continue your debate. No, I'd like an apology. Did you want to take shots at me about you haven't seen too much reading? Tonight I didn't see you read advice. Well, I was doing it before we spoke. Thank you very much. If you want to take shots at me, it's a two-way street, all right? The chair
It's not a
doesn't
pot
protect
shot.
you.
It's not a pot shot, Burns. Continue your debate.
Well, let's just let me speak, which I have a right to, and not be interrupted. Thank you, Mr.
You
Mayor.
do, but just speak about your procedural motion and don't go into the substance
I
of
will
the
not
legal
go into the
advice.
substance. Councillors, only several minutes ago, okay, we all, and I don't think we would have known it hadn't Councillor Powell brought it to our attention. Somehow he spotted it on the train or somewhere along the line, and I'm so glad that he did, brought it to our attention, and we adjourned for 10 or 15 minutes. All right. Inside the documents, questions are asked by our attorneys, or one of our attorneys, saying that, albeit it's not impossible. Right?
Hang on, Councillor Burns, you're not going to disclose the substance of legal
Okay.
advice in an open meeting. You've been around council long enough to know that.
Okay.
If you want to move a procedural motion to go behind closed doors, let's do that and let's talk about it.
No, I'm happy to do it in public.
Well, no, the city's not happy for you to do it in public.
I'm not going to say another word about the
substance of the legal advice, that you can take it as read.
Let me carry on, then we'll see.
Carry on about your procedural motion to move on to the next item of
That we move
business.
to the next item of business. You've read it. There's questions, okay? And while there's questions, we should not be debating this, okay? I'm sorry, okay? This is going to be a very long project. We might get set back again and again and again. But at the end of the day, right, that building something of this importance, which I would suggest to you is more important than the overall...
Okay, well, Councillor Burns, you can voice those types of views if we get past your procedural motion. So have you finished debating your procedural motion? Have you finished speaking to it?
Councillors, I would suggest that I hope you forgive me for requesting that we push this back again, okay? However, it must be the thing, and I would ask for your support, okay, that we do this properly and that we adjourn so that we can have a look, if we are going to do it this way, what is the wording going to be?
Right, we'll vote on the procedural motion. It hasn't come up. Yeah, the procedural motion is lost 3-5. So we'll carry on. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation? Councillor Freeze moving, Councillor Kosovich seconding.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I have to say tonight I do support the officer's recommendation to initiate a request for tender process to recommend to council a qualified and experienced architect to prepare a concept design for a new civic building to replace the council chambers and administration building, and a preliminary master plan for the surrounds with the civic precinct. It's absolutely time to move forward with decision making. September 2022, a day we all remember very well. Well, if you were on council, it certainly was quite memorable, when we were sadly not able to return to our council chambers and were homeless for a short period of time and spent a number of weeks looking for accommodation, months, and we found this really suitable accommodation. But prior to that, we'd also become aware that the council, the Civic Centre, was in dire need of an upgrade. There were certainly big issues that were brought to our attention, and we did have a briefing from Christo, and we had some ideas put to us, which at the time we were interested in all sorts of options, but after the fire it became imperative that the refurbish the Civic Centre option was simply not really the best way forward. And I won't bore you with the details of how poor a state the building was in, but former Mayor Penny Taylor was certainly inconvenienced quite greatly when her offices were flooded in a fairly normal winter rain. But it was staff who were mostly affected by the poor air quality and the really appalling work conditions, which I must say I was quite shocked by when I saw. So I think it's time that we do just initiate the process to consider what kind of civic centre we have. Making a decision is difficult, and we've seen this at countless workshops where we've had debate, where we've discussed issues, and between this council and the previous council, I can see that even coming up with a design brief is something that we as councillors, it might be a bridge too far. So I feel like the process will be hugely improved by us working with an architect. Now, I trust staff, I do, but I also really appreciate what the Mayor has done, and the legal advice really makes clear what the Mayor has done in his amendment will give us the oversight, which was an issue which came to us fairly early on, as former Councillor Jennings raised this, and we know what can we do to have some more oversight into the choice of architect and some of the ideas that might come forward. We didn't just want one design, we wanted different ideas, and staff were the ones who raised the idea of a competition, actually. So I think it's been fabulous for us to have multiple discussions in workshops, multiple opportunities between councillors to look at the different types of options. But we know that this is still, as Councillor Burns rightly pointed out, a very long process, and I believe it should be. I think we should be consulting with the community. I think we should be consulting with each other, and we have to show high levels of cooperation and great listening skills. And I know this is going to be a really stressful time for us, and I'd too like to have delayed the decision, but I know we have to make one. So I do support this. I know that there are things within the brief that I don't fully agree with, but that's not the point. We're not here to discuss the brief as such. We know the brief is just a brief, and we will be coming back to this. We will be coming back to this with our input. But what we want is an inspiring, and I like those words that were put in the vision. We want something inspiring. We want something that's going to be here for the next generation and the one after that. We want something that preserves the integrity of those beautiful trees, the Norfolk trees, and that history and heritage. And I think we do know that staff are very proud about our history. We do know that staff work so closely to preserve that. I believe that we will get the best outcome for the city, and I'm confident in my fellow councillors to support this. It is the best approach, and the Mayor's amendment is well received by me, and I hope by other elected members. Thank you.
Councillor Kosovic.
Thank you, Mayor, and I thank Councillor De Vries for her summary. I'll try to go to the main crux of what we're dealing with. There are two methods of procuring an architect before us tonight: a traditional procurement approach and an architectural tender approach, a competition. Subject to being persuaded otherwise, I support the traditional procurement approach, with the CEO initiating a request for tender to recommend to Council a qualified and experienced architect to prepare a concept design for a new civic building to replace the council chambers and administration building, and 2, a preliminary master plan for the new surrounds with the civic precinct based on the vision, design principles, opportunities, constraints and functional basis. I also believe that the request for tender approach has been enhanced by the Mayor's amendment, which has value-added and safeguarded the process. And it's also afforded elected members opportunities to provide feedback to the evaluating officers in a manner determined by the CEO in consultation with the Mayor as advised to the elected members. Regarding the tender process, the evaluation criteria of the request for tender being advertised, the suitability of the tenders prior to the officers putting a recommendation to Council for the award of the contract to a selected tenderer. Council confirms it is its intent that upon selection of an architectural procurement method, priority will be given to the identification of a suitable community touchpoints and a community consultation to be programmed following the appointment of an architect. I am not supportive of the architectural tender process to seek concept designs from the different architects and the payment of a $20,000 honorarium to each selected architect to develop a concept design, which can be assessed by an expert evaluation panel, in brackets a jury. This approach is expensive, and there is no guarantee that the final decision will deliver on expectations due to a whole lot of reasons, not the least of which Council is not satisfied with any of the designs. The community do not want a Taj Mahal and expect Council to cap the budget in not wanting to spend more than they believe we can afford. This would make achieving a value for money outcome with an architectural tender process nigh and impossible to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you. My amendment's been foreshadowed a number of times, so I think I'll test it now. I'll move the amendment as submitted. I'll look for a seconder for my amendment. Councillor O'Connor seconding. I didn't want to have to speak too much to this, but in anticipation of debate, I might vacate the chair, Councillor Kosovich, if you're happy to preside for the debate of this amendment only. Okay, so I will speak in favour of my amendment. Yeah, look, despite the drama of the 15-minute adjournment to concede about a page's worth of legal advice, I think you can take it as a given that I've submitted an alternative that is consistent with legal advice received by an amendment that is consistent with legal advice received by the city. I wouldn't proceed if it wasn't. Now, look, it's pretty straightforward. It adds a bit of colour to the officer recommendation, and I think it covers a shared intent that's been voiced amongst those who participated and stayed till the end of every strategic workshop on this topic so far. There is an appetite for elected member input into the tender process, and frankly, we've got to be careful about that for reasons of good governance. There's a role for staff to play, and there's a role for councillors to play. This is not a strange beast we're dealing with. This is just good governance. It's the same that you would expect of any corporate entity in the business world, and it's what our ratepayers should expect of us also. There are staff roles to play and there are council roles to play. What point 2 of my amendment does is allow us to have a level of input into the tender process, which I hope will appease most of the members of council. And that feedback will take place in a way consistent with contemporary standards of good governance. Councillors, if you wanted to roll up your hands and assess tenders, then I'd suggest you seek employment at another local government, but that's not our role. Our role is different to that. So point 2, envisages that we will have input into the tender process before it even gets underway, and then we'll have input into the suitability of tenderers once the process has commenced. Now, councillors, if you think you're going to be cut out of the process post-amendment, then I really don't know what else we can do to give you comfort. It's going to be a collaborative exercise between councillors and staff, and councillors are going to be doing the level of heavy lifting which I'd expect of employees of the City of Subiaco. They get paid the good money to do the work that we are not in a position to do, and I've got every confidence that they'll do it pursuant to this amendment. Now, look, point 3 is pretty straightforward, and I think it needs little explanation, but it confirms an intent which I think we've danced around a little bit, but which is shared by councillors and by staff, and that is that there'll be community input into this important project. We don't know what that will look like just yet because we haven't chosen a procurement method or appointed an architect. With a bit of luck after tonight, we'll at least get out of the gates. And if we do, we'll be able to identify the points at which the community consultation is going to take place. And probably once we've actually appointed an architect, that's when we'll start putting in some timeframes for when that consultation will take place. Councillors, I hope you can support my amendment. I hope you've taken the opportunity to read the brief amount of legal advice that staff sought in response to the amendment I submitted, and that you're satisfied that I'm not putting up anything that would be indefensible legally, because I assure you I'm not. And I hope that I can count on your support for the amendment so that we can get on to a vote on the officer recommendation and start making some real decisions about this important process, which frankly has been a long time coming and which needs us to make some decisions in order to get out of the gates. So I hope I can count on your support for this amendment.
Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Chair. This is a really significant project for the council. It's a little overwhelming as a new councillor to be thinking about making decisions that are going to be around for the next 100 years. So it's a responsibility that I think we all take very, very seriously. And certainly the amendment to this resolution reflects the discussions that we've had in our workshops, where we have raised certainly interest in being as involved as we can be under the legislation as it stands in the elements that are in the amendment. So the tender process, the evaluation criteria, and the suitability of tenderers. There are obviously legal limits as to how much we can be involved, and it's very important that we don't step over those lines. And so I'm comfortable with the wording of this recommendation, this amendment to the recommendation progressing. Thank you.
Any more speakers for or against the amendment?
To discuss legal advice.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Sorry, a seconder, please. Councillor Burns. I'll call the matter to vote. Thank you. Sorry? Just checking if he wants to speak. Did you? Sorry. Apologies, Councillor Powell. Did you want to speak to the...
Yes, very briefly. Look, I appreciate the Mayor's intent with this, and I think it's a good one. However, I do think that there are some matters in the legal advice that we probably need to discuss further. And I don't think rushing it and not discussing them is actually going to be of a benefit to us. So I'm not disagreeing with what the Mayor is proposing, but what I'm saying is we need to talk about some of this legal advice, and we need to do it behind closed doors.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. I'll call the vote to go behind closed doors.
Excuse me, Deputy Mayor. Can I make a personal explanation?
You've got the floor.
I'm just concerned that there might be an inference that I've done something at short notice. I just want to be clear that I submitted an amendment within the required timeframes. Staff sought advice on my amendment. They received the advice. They made their officer comment within the usual timeframes, and the advice was uploaded to the Legal and Governance database at about 2 p.m. this afternoon, and everyone on the council email system would have received the same notification that Councillor Powell did, and which I know I did. So I just want to make that personal explanation.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll ask the public and the media to leave, please. Thank you, everyone. We've just come out from behind closed doors. It's Deputy Mayor Gary Kosovich in the chair at the moment, and we're now going to return to the amendment put up by the Mayor, and I'll now call for further speakers, those for or against. Did you, Councillor O'Connor, did you wish to speak in relation to the... Yes? Anyone against? Okay, Councillor De Vries speaking for the amendment.
I'm so pleased that the Mayor has gone into the trouble of considering the detail of how councillors might be involved in this process. And I also understand that the Mayor has given consideration to this over a period of time. It is a reflection of all the work that's been done over many, many months on council. When we've discussed things, it reflects his nuanced understanding of how council feels about this process, and I support it wholeheartedly.
Are there any further speakers? I'll call the vote. Mine's not either. Okay. That's carried unanimously. That now forms part of the substantive motion, and I'll now hand the chair back to the Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Kosovich. For the 3 people watching in person and probably the half dozen at home, they may notice that there's a councillor missing. I think it would be proper that we ask Councillor Burns to come back and join us, because I want him to have the opportunity to not only debate in public but to cast his vote, as is his duty. So would someone go and see if Councillor Burns is willing to come back into the room?
Mayor, I'll undertake that. If you like, I'll go and speak to him.
Okay.
Mayor, he's made it clear that he does not want to return to the room to vote on this matter. He will return after this item is finished.
Okay, we'll carry on then. We've had speakers, well, we've had the mover and the seconder of the substantive motion. We've dealt with the amendment, so we're now debating the substantive motion as amended. We've heard from the mover and the seconder, so I'll take speakers against at this stage if there are any. Speakers for? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. As we've said before, we've had many workshops on this item, and I believe that it's time to make a decision. We've been presented with a couple of methods to do this, and I believe that the request for tender is the more appropriate. I think that this council doesn't have the expertise to come up with a suitable brief that would work for an architectural tender, and I think we need to get an architect on board to help us progress this project sooner rather than later. So I favour voting for the officer's motion.
Any other speakers? Councillor Powell.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe I'm a speaker against. I don't know. Look, as has been pointed out, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of discussion between councillors and staff about what's appropriate, what's affordable, what community facilities there should be, what the staff requirements are, and the list goes on and on. And in some ways, I know we've had 6 workshops, but I feel at times we've just been going around in circles. I think from the outset, staff have had a pretty clear idea of what they want, and that's fair enough. They're going to be working in the new civic centre. But I'm not sure that what they want is always aligned with the views of elected members who see it from a residents' and ratepayers' point of view. So perhaps it's right that now it should be coming to this council meeting to determine if we are heading in the right direction and if we've got the basics right. And look, that's where my concern lies. Tonight we're actually being asked to, essentially being asked to whether we want to appoint an architect by a tender process or an architectural competition. And I think there are problems with both. The request for tender, I think that the fact that the Mayor needed to raise that amendment highlights that there are some concerns with this. And the competition, well, that also means that we might lose control because a panel would probably be doing the decisions. So Councillor Kosovich did say we had 2 options, but look, there's 3 in the officer's report, and the third one is to go back to the drawing board. At the moment, that's what I'm favouring. I'm not sure that we've got it right in the specifications in the functions for the briefing document. The document upon which any architect will work, no matter which selection process is chosen. For example, the specifications call for a building of 2,000 to 3,000 square metres in size. The present Civic Centre, 241, I think was a bit over 1,300 square metres. And look, I don't disagree, that's too small, but doubling the size or more, I don't know whether I'd call that modest, and that has been a regular refrain of all the councillors in the past couple of years. So while I'm not against increasing the size, I think you need to ask someone who are designing the building that that they'll naturally opt for the bigger size because, well, that's the bigger commission in all sense of the word. There's a functional specification over which there's been a considerable debate amongst councillors. That's bringing in the outdoor staff under one roof. And so if we make a decision tonight on a tender, de facto, I think we're impacting on the future of 19 Bishop Street, where the technical staff are presently housed. Now, this is another big decision. I can see that the staff arguments about having to have all the staff under one roof, the breakdown of silos, the better communications and the like. But then there have been counter-arguments raised, like not having all your eggs in one basket, which the fire at 241 demonstrated. You know, decentralised does have some advantages. There are also arguments about the costs of putting all the staff under one roof when so much money was spent on refurbishing 19 Bishop Street. And the extra cost will add to the Civic Centre, like the provision of a 50-bay undercroft for vehicles. I think at the moment it's around about 19 or 20. And underground car parking is a lot more expensive. And in the tender proposals, there's no mention of price. Maybe that's not surprising, but that's what ratepayers will want to know. Look, internally, I don't think other councillors and staff, anybody's aiming for a Taj Mahal or a Rolls Royce. Something functional and aesthetically pleasing, I think, is what we want. And it would appear there's benefit to the increased densification and population growth. That means that we can probably build something without a huge hit to rates. But we've got to be upfront about cost to persuade the community. So, as I said, maybe it's time for a circuit breaker. And I think we need to get the basic building blocks right though first, the functional specifications nailed into regard to the size and price, and I don't think we've done that yet with this plan. So I'm still not supporting either the calling of tenders or an architectural competition at this stage. I suppose what I'm saying is this is a big decision and we should take our time over it if it's required. Thank you.
Speakers for or against? Councillor Johnston.
Look, I think the amendment that the Mayor put forward is, certainly an improvement. Personally, I think the architectural tender is, I would like to see that go forward. I think that's the balance between what Councillor Powell's talking about and the officer recommendation. It enables a group of architects to put a design together based on the brief, and we have to then be quite specific about that brief. So we would be going back to the drawing board and basically really specifying what the parameters are. It would require putting in a budget, all of that, a lot more detail. So that would then enable that competition to happen, and then we would be able to have community engagement with preferred design. We would have a panel, which presumably there'd be some councillors on that panel. I think that gives us the best of it all, and it promotes high quality applicants from the architectural profession, innovative design. I think that would be a really good way to go. That would be my preference.
Any other speakers? Okay, well in that case, Councillor De Vries, do you want to close?
I do. Thank you. It was interesting hearing that we could bring this back and no process would work and we could still be looking at decision making. I feel this council is the one that needs to make the decision. So I do urge councillors, whether they go for the competition or for the RFT, I think we have to go forward. Because this is a big decision and this council's already started to get their head around what that involves, and it would be hard to go to another new council and have to do that. I really want to just rebut a couple of points made by Councillor Powell that any architect who comes on board with this would go for the bigger footprint or the bigger build because they get a bigger commission. I think that probably isn't the case. I think some architects would rightly be really proud to put their name against a beautiful and smaller well-designed build. So I would hope that that's what is going to happen, is somebody would be so proud to have their name attached to being the architect of a new civic chamber. Putting this out to the community and having a competition would be great. I can see the merits of that, and at one point indeed I supported it. But I've gone to the other position that I can see how complicated we are as a council, which is exemplified by the robust debate we've been having this evening. I could imagine we could be sitting here again for another 18 months just trying to come up with a brief. I don't think we've got time for that. We do need to move forward. I do urge councillors to support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call the vote. Okay, the resolution's carried 5-2. We'll move on to C5.
Mayor, I'll just get out and...
well, maybe if a staff member can get Councillor Burns, because we should carry on. Yeah, you need a timeout. Well, why don't we all take a 5-minute break and adjourn for 5 minutes?
Councillor De Vries just said?
If it's a personal information explanation and not further debate, then yes, Councillor Powell.
No, it's not further debate, Mayor. It's simply that a commission is an architectural commission. That's what the job is. It's not necessarily about money.
My apologies for getting that wrong. It's simply, I assumed it was, you're talking about the commission being the money. Sorry, my apologies.
Okay, we're losing councillors, so I'm going to adjourn for 5 minutes and we'll be back on at 7:51 p.m. Okay, we're up to item C5, the mid-year budget review. This requires an absolute majority, so I'll seek a mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation. Councillor Burns moving. Councillor Kosovich seconding. Councillor Burns. Councillor Kosovich. Did anyone want to debate item C5? I'll put it straight to the vote. Okay, the amendments to the 23-24 budget are carried unanimously under item C5. C6 formed part of the on-block vote, so we'll move on to C7, a major land transaction affecting several properties, including a recommendation for a new pocket park. You'll all have read the officer recommendation, and there's two alternatives that have been submitted, one by Councillor Powell and one by Councillor O'Connor. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation on C7? Councillor De Vries moving, Councillor Kosovich seconding. Councillor De Vries.
Yeah, yet again, the officer's report has a recommendation has my support. Last OCM, I had an alternate, which was to go to a workshop, and I'm so happy that we did because it gave us the opportunity to really address some of the core issues which were of concern to councillors, and it certainly made me much more firm in my views. I believe this recommendation is a thoughtful balance between ensuring that the city's assets do not sit fallow and become a cost, a liability to the city, and at the same time provide a pocket park that is generous and sensible in its dimensions and will enable the protection of the lemon-scented gum, which is on the significant tree register. And here I want to digress and make a brief comment on the importance of Council's decision to register this magnificent tree. It was put by former Councillor Jennings as an elected member's motion, who carved out this opportunity for other EMs to pursue a more proactive approach to tree protection. For that, I thank her. Furthermore, by setting the tone of protection of our natural assets just a little more, Councillor Jennings probably enabled there to be a frank appraisal of the need for a pocket park. The officer in their report noted retention of the tree suggests that demolition of the property on site provides the best opportunity for the tree to flourish. The existence of the tree itself did not necessarily drive the support for this pocket park from my fellow councillors, but it has certainly created a new narrative which is around the importance of tree protection when and where we can. The relatively small size of the park, around 1,150 square metres, is adequate and appropriate to the needs of this area. With large trees, the lemon-scented gums and additional trees that will no doubt be planted, the cooling effect of this will be a welcome refuge for those seeking a place to sit outside. As with other small parks and pocket parks in the city, this will be a chance for residents and visitors to the city to connect with nature in a positive and, importantly, safe way. Further, the sale of 6 Rupert, which abuts 203 Bagot Road, will allow for the funds to be put aside for the upgrade of the park, which will require an investment. And I note that that 1.5 million could also come from the sale of 8. But I think with the strong community support for their park, there seems to be no basis for not supporting the officer's recommendations. Sale of both 6 and 8 seem the most sensible decision. The sale of 6 puts the onus of responsibility on the buyer to landscape and develop the land, which will reduce any costs associated with the creation of a pocket park. With 6 largely bitumen, the work required to build this into a pocket park would be considerable and likely expensive. 8 Rupert, and I hope I'm getting my 8s and 6s correct, has had a long and happy life in the city of Subiaco. Used for social housing once as the mayor's office and for other purposes, it has, I believe, run its course. And now it is time to allow a family to call it their home. It would be my hope that this property would be sold to a family and not used as an office space, which I think we've clarified that will certainly be the case. Sale of any properties could be put in a future fund, which I would hope would be invested to support a future pocket park. And I think, this is just my personal view, but where once our most valued assets might have been our properties, Perhaps now our most valued assets are our small parks in creating an even greener Subiaco. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kosovich.
Thank you, Mayor. When I moved this officer recommendation at the February Ordinary Council meeting, I was of the view the demolition of the Subiaco Community Centre at 203 Bagot Road, adjoining the Rupert Street cul-de-sac gardens, would achieve an overall pocket park of around 1,000 square metres in size. However, staff have since clarified, and I thank Director Wollaston for her good work on this, that the actual size of the pocket park would be 1,150 square metres. Consequently, I now believe this rectangular shaped pocket park would be large enough, and that incorporating 6 Rupert Street to further enlarge it to 1,550 square metres is not warranted nor justified at this location. By comparison, the nearby Richard Dickens Pocket Park is 900 square metres in size and is fit for purpose and meets the needs of residents. Instead, I now fully embrace the officer recommendation, including the sale of 6 Rupert Street and 8 Rupert Street, which in part is required to fund the demolition of the community centre and the creation of the pocket park. There is also expected to be surplus funds realised from the sale of these properties, which Council would no doubt want quarantined with a view to either purchasing land in another part of the city to create another pocket park or another community benefit. Either way, it would be a decision for Council. To facilitate these arrangements, it is suggested the funds would be placed into the city's capital investment reserves or the building investment reserve, with a stated aim of delivering the best possible returns arising out of a more diversified investment portfolio. At 1,150 square metres, Pocket Park will effectively address our community's requirements in terms of having sufficient recreational amenity for all concerned, which will include children's play equipment, sustainable bench seats and tables, a water fountain and a barbecue. It will also ameliorate the city's tree canopy and improve air quality, thus making it habitable all year round by ensuring there is respite from hot summers through the provision of cooler shaded areas in the park in our rapidly heating climate. It will also meet the needs of a broad section of the community, from families to people with special needs, the young and the old alike, and those in need of a place to walk their dog. The park will also make a significant contribution to open green space at a time when green space, a perilous commodity in our community, is set to decline by 25% over the next 7 years due to rapidly increased density as the Subi East redevelopment ramps up. The park will further offset the future medium to high density impact of the Crossways LDP when this redevelopment site comes more sharply into focus in the not too distant future. In closing, I advise there exists a generational opportunity whereby Council can have its say in the gaping issue of insufficient green space for our future requirements, thereby going some way towards meeting the needs of our rapidly growing community. I commend the officer recommendation to you.
Speakers against. Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. There are several considerations in this item: the former Meals on Wheels facility that's been converted to a community centre, the car park associated with that centre, the heritage listed house, and of course the significant tree. I'll start with the former Meals on Wheels centre. Council visited this building and it's definitely past its prime. It's no longer suitable or desirable for use as a community centre, and it's become increasingly difficult to attract users. The building is also extremely close to the significant tree, and no doubt going forward will have an impact on it. I appreciate the community concern at the loss of this centre, but the removal of the building affords us the opportunity to create a different type of community facility, the Pocket Park, with the significant tree as an important feature. This location is particularly appropriate for a pocket park because it's adjacent to the closed-off end of Rupert Street, a section of road reserve which is still with main roads. But the question then is, how much land should Subiaco contribute to the pocket park? Removing the building and remediating the land and then landscaping and adding features to create a park is not an inexpensive exercise. Creating a pocket park in this location has been estimated to cost in the region of $1.5 million. It's therefore prudent to look at what can be done to offset those costs. In terms of 8 Rupert Street, this is a heritage property and it's zoned residential. Where possible, the best use for a heritage property is the one for which it was created. This is because changes to a new use inevitably bring changes to the fabric, and the building's already undergone some changes which have resulted in losses to the original fabric. It was built as a home, and ideally in the future it should be used as a home. The fact that Western Australia is also experiencing a residential housing shortage supports the best use of the property as a residence. So, what to do with 6 Rupert Street? It could all be included in the pocket park, and there is an alternative for that, and it could be sold. I believe that it would be appropriate to retain the western end of Rupert Street and incorporate that into a pocket park and sell the eastern end of number 6 Rupert Street as a residential block to the market, providing another opportunity for someone to join our Subiaco community on a small block. The proceeds of that sale could help offset the additional cost of creating a larger park. While it's unlikely that Main Roads might make changes to the park, it is possible that they could reopen the cul-de-sac for something like a bike or e-scooter path, for example. Should that happen, it would impact the size and use of the pocket park. It could also impact on the connection the pocket park has with Rupert Street. By including the western half of lot number 6 Rupert Street in the pocket park, it would provide an enduring connection through to the street from Bagot to Rupert, regardless of what might happen in the future to the area that's managed by Main Roads. Thank you.
Speaker for the officer recommendation. For the officer recommendation. Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor McMullen. I support the officer recommendation. I'm in 2 minds, but I'm not going to suggest an alternative that we could revisit if there was a mood to it. The concept of immediately putting 6 and 8 up for sale and just hold them back for a little thinking time on it, considering there are multiple concepts of what we do and do not do to them. The suggestion made by Councillor O'Connell is a good one. Unfortunately, I find a mathematical problem in it, that if you keep half the land for a park to sell off half and keep the other part of the park, then all you end up doing is spending the money on creating the park and the empty half of it. So it's a bit of a negative sum game. So there's a little bit of thinking to be there. There is community sentiment. It seems people are hearing about it very late, because I got a whole bunch of phone calls in the last 24 hours. Everybody screaming about selling off Rupert Street stuff, which arguably I found very annoying, seeing it was almost less than 24 hours before we were about to discuss it. But anyway, so it could be amended on the fly to hold back, if somebody wanted to do it, to proceed in time or whatever to point 4 to sell 6 and 8 and just leave that for now and just move to proceed. I'm not in favour at all of making the park any bigger than's required. I think that and staff agree in what I've read that the chances of Main Roads ever doing anything with the end of the cul-de-sac are just none of Buckley's. The park will adjoin what is state land, which is great. We get something for free. It'll be a good size. But I will finish by saying this. I don't look, I like pocket parks. I reckon they're great, but I think they should be smaller and all over the place, okay? Anytime there's some old house for sale, we should be the first ones that grab it if it's not near something that we've got, okay? Not if it's, and I'm talking about not, worthy houses, but something that has no heritage value or is already run down and there's nothing around it. Because pocket parks should be places mothers with prams can walk to and meet other mothers. Kids with bikes can, men of an older age can ride to. That's what pocket parks are. I know the Deputy Mayor talks about size and things like that, but a pocket park to me can be 500 square metres. Okay, it's just a place for kids to have some swings and plays and a tree for parents to sit under, have a little picnic or something like that if their backyard's not too bad. And they should be all over the city because what Councillor Rees said about parks, is correct. There's things we can provide community, right? And they should just be spotted, everywhere. Every time you turn a street, I'd love to see one, okay? So I support the motion. I just wanted to tell you, just wanted to explain why I'm not negative, Councillor Powell's idea. I'm not opposed. I see issues with them, but it is about this, and we might as well call a spade or an axe an axe, okay? If that tree wasn't there, and it's a beautiful tree, it's got a nice shape, it's tall, it's the right colour, it's got a really nifty name, a lemon-scented tree. Who can't not like a lemon-scented tree, even if you've never seen one, right? But at the end of the day, if that tree wasn't there, we'd just be selling that land off, period, okay? I don't want anybody to nod their head and find agreement or whatever else. Everybody can just pretend it's the perfect place in the world for a pocket park. But we're doing it to save a tree, and there's nothing wrong with that, okay? But the bigger the park gets, the more expensive the tree gets, to my mind, okay? So we're doing the right thing. The right thing in my mind, okay? So no offence to the tree, love it, it's great. Glad they're not all over the place. It would never be selling anything, but I'll leave it at that. I support the staff motion, but I would like to not rush in on racing to sell 6 and 8, because I do see the right now there's only 2,200 houses for sale in the state of Western Australia, and land and it's just getting better every day. So every day we wait, right, that land just becomes more and more valuable for people, are fighting over somewhere to either build a home or buy one. So, and that's not going to change for quite a long time. So we could hold it for a little while longer and see what we think. But I'm not going to put that up as a motion or anything else. It's something for our staff to perhaps think on. Thank you very much, everybody.
Any speakers against the officer recommendation? Councillor Jones.
Yeah, it feels odd to be speaking against the officer's recommendation because we're going to get, all of the proposed motions end up with a pocket park, and I think that's a wonderful outcome for the community. I'm only speaking against it in the sense that I think that Councillor O'Connor's suggestion of splitting 6 into 2 provides us a better park, still provides us a potential dwelling on 6 because people still need places to live, and I think that the costing will probably come out about neutral overall. So I don't think it's going to hit the funds. I prefer a larger pocket park, and I think that's what the community would like.
Speaker for the officer recommendation. Speaker against. Councillor Johnston.
Actually, I'm speaking for the recommendation. I think the size of, if you sell 203 Bagot, I think the size, when you combine that with the land next door, it's over 1,000 square metres. It's larger than the Richard Diggins Park. I think that's plenty of size for a pocket park there, and I think either selling or retaining the 2 Rupert Street lots. Either way, I think there's pros and cons with both. You could retain them. Prices are going to be buoyant, I would imagine, in real estate. So I don't think I don't think we need to sell them in a hurry. But yeah, I think it's a large enough pocket park with just 203. And then if we choose to sell number 6 Rupert, then the money could go towards purchasing a pocket park somewhere else in the neighbourhood where there isn't anything much. And the community feedback I'm very aware of that was really opposed to selling the land, and that seems to be really strong. Clearly, previous councils had vision in buying land strategically. They're both fantastic locations. So I'm quite mindful of us selling that land without a clear purpose on where it's going. Thank you.
There's 2 elected members who haven't spoken. Councillor Powell, do you want to take the opportunity? I'm including myself as well.
Yeah, look, I put forward an alternative for all of number 6 to be turned into park. So it's no surprise, I don't think, that I'm speaking against the officer recommendation, although I agree that, sort of no matter which way we end up, we're going to end up ahead because we're going to have a pocket park no matter what the decision is. Look, the number of pocket parks created on council freehold land can be counted on the fingers of one hand. In 125 years since the city was established, according to some figures I got from the council, we've managed to establish 5 parks. So to say this is a generational opportunity to create new green public space on council land is an understatement. In fact, the last big pocket park that I could find on the council figures of a comparable size to what we're proposing is the popular Richard Diggins Park, which was created about 40 years ago. So think about that, a generational opportunity to create intergenerational equity. The pocket park will not just be for us, but green lungs for the city and our children going forward. And as far as I'm concerned, the bigger, the better. As our growing population density will make this sort of open space even more critical in a city that has the least tree canopy cover in Australia, of any capital in Australia. This is also totally in line with our urban forest strategy, which urges more canopy on private land. So let's put our money where our mouth is and do it grand. Look, there's been some discussion as to the cost of to the city's bottom line. Well, we have substantial cash reserves and assets, and foregoing the sale of number 6 would virtually have no impact on the city's finances. We own the land. Whereas with the Richard Diggins Park, that council had to purchase the property, a far more challenging proposal than what we're being asked to do. Look, there's also been some argument in the community that it should be sold for housing, as if that'll some way be a contribution towards solving the affordable housing crisis. Well, maybe, close to $1 million for the land and another, $1 million or so for, a big townhouse or a few townhouses. I don't think $2 million homes are going to have much effect on the affordable housing crisis. And look, a little bit of what irks me with that is it also seems to play into the state government's false narrative that councils are to blame for the lack of affordable housing, and that's why we're having our powers stripped from us. And I don't want to be any part of that government scapegoating of councils for their catastrophic housing policies. And look, if we were serious about trying to create affordable housing in this area, then maybe we'd have a caveat of some kind on the sale of the land that it's to be used to promote social housing. So down to the nitty-gritty of what we're actually looking at, there have been Numerous requests not to sell the heritage-listed 8 Rupert Street. Look, I've inspected the property and it's a home, it's in relatively good condition with special needs provisions, but it's vacant and no special needs groups have been asking to take it over according to the staff report. Now, internally restoring the cornices, rosettes, and the LED lighting is fantastic with the afternoon sun coming through. But the council's not going to do it up, and it is zoned residential. So perhaps a family, especially someone who may have someone with special needs, might find this an ideal residence and restore it to its full glory, leaving it better than it is being left vacant. And its sale will fund the development of the Pocket Park, so no hit to rates to fund it. Look, there's little disagreement over turning 203 Bagot Road into a Pocket Park. So that, in the end, leaves 6 Rupert to retain, sell portion of it. Now, I'm favouring turning all of it into a pocket park on social and environmental grounds, as I've outlined in my reasons for the support of the alternative. Look, at the February briefing forum, Councillor Burns did suggest he would never sell it, that it could be aggregated and council with other blocks, and council might get a better development. Now, that mightn't be the case now, but at least as far as council ownership remains, the idea is still there. In private hands, this could evolve into something more dense as a surrounding development around the park, and much higher, as we would have no planning laws about what's built there. So the only way we can retain a say in it is by keeping all of number 6. So what I urge is, let's be visionary, let's be grand, let's be short-sighted. There's no financial, social need to sell parts of number 6, none at all, and I don't know where the money will go. I think Councillor Kosovic mentioned perhaps quarantining some of it or going into a facilities fund, but that's not in that officer motion. That, in fact, is in part of that is, in fact, in the alternative. So there's good strategic, social and environmental reasons to keep it and to grow the heart and lungs of our garden suburb, and that's what I'd like us to do.
Yeah, seeking clarification on something Councillor Powell said.
Yeah, maybe I did say it, but half the room seemed to shake their head.
You might be wanting to give us a personal explanation.
Yeah, okay, sorry, personal explanation. Maybe I did say it, Councillor Powell, but half the room seemed to shake their head like they'd never heard it, so I have no recollection, so maybe you missed it.
At the briefing forum, it wasn't at the council meeting, it was at the briefing forum.
What did I say? I'd say I'd never sell it.
Combine it, aggregate it with the other.
Whatever. Okay. Well, no big deal. But sorry, I missed your point. Okay, I didn't.
It's not a criticism of you. It's just a.
Okay, fine. Yeah, I'll accept it. I just was confused. You know what I mean? Failing memory, age.
Thanks, Councillor. We'll move on. There's one elected member who hasn't spoken. I will enter the debate briefly, and I'll speak for the officer recommendation. Look, it's a funny decision. I've heard a number of people say that whatever the decision, we get a pocket park, but mathematically that may or may not be the case. It's quite conceivable that we never get to a point where a majority of councillors agree about what to do with all 3 of the lots that we're talking about this evening. So sometimes, council's always a numbers game, but sometimes you've got to take a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. And look, this is a question with no black or white or yes, no answer. There is simply no right or wrong way to approach this situation. But what we all agree about is that a pocket park, however it's come about, would be a good addition to this part of Subiaco. And look, I think the proposal ticks a number of boxes. It ticks the environmental and sustainability box. It provides a community purpose in lieu of a community centre which has long fallen into disrepair and no longer provides a community benefit. And the officer recommendation does still provide for a respectable financial return in the way that we'll be handling number 6 and number 8 Rupert Street. And I think that's, for me, that's I suppose the factor that's really tipped me in favour of the officer recommendation, without expanding the pocket park, without any subdivisions of 6 Rupert Street, because property has a value, and if we make this park bigger and bigger, then there will be value in 6 Rupert Street, whether it's all or part of 6 Rupert Street, that never gets unlocked. So I think we've got, if we're going to talk about intergenerational equity, then we've got a responsibility to responsibly manage city assets and to maximise returns where possible, while still adjusting for the triple bottom line, which I know this city values very greatly. So look, it ticks all the boxes in my view, and it does it in a way that that eases the rates pressure on our ratepayer base as well. Yes, where affordable housing and housing stock has been mentioned by some people in the last few weeks, months, or even in the debate. And look, I really don't see this as having any bearing on the availability of affordable housing or housing stock in our state. But I understand the state government's made it easier to erect dongers and shipping containers in backyards. So perhaps that is the way forward to pick up on Councillor Powell's concern about affordable housing in the state. And now I'm waffling. I support the officer recommendation. I can't even remember who moved. Yeah, Councillor De Vries, do you want to close? That was too good, no. Okay. No. No, last month I broke down the question because it was complicated, because we hadn't workshopped it, we didn't have suitable alternatives. Tonight I think we're in a position to make a vote, to have a vote on the whole recommendation.
Councillor Powell's reminded me I have no memory of such things, so
let's put it to the vote. Okay, the motion's carried 5-3. Okay, we've got an elected member motion now. Yeah, submitted by Councillor De Vries. An elected member motion to make an appointment of 2 deputy members to the Walga Central Metro Zone Committee. Presumably, Councillor De Vries, you'll move your elected member motion. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Jones. Councillor De Vries.
This is just in light of the fact that it's always possible that people can't attend meetings, and that's more understandable given, people's commitments and so on. So I've just considered it, and I don't necessarily want to be the person that deputises, but if the opportunity or there was a need, then I'd be happy to deputise. But obviously having 2 deputies is ideal, because that means that there's an opportunity for both deputies to be available if the members cannot attend the Walga Central Zone, which sometimes raises important issues, and it's good that there can be a quorum, because on occasion, and it's not just to say it's not Subiaco principally that is not attending. It can be other councils having problems having councillors attending as well. So it's just an opportunity, and I just hope that people are happy with it. Thank you.
Councillor Jones. Does anyone want to debate the motion? Okay, we'll call the vote. The elected member motion's carried unanimously. Well done, Councillors De Vries and Jones. Okay, there's no business of an urgent nature that I'm aware of, so we'll move to go behind closed doors. I'll seek a mover and a seconder for a procedural motion to close the meeting to the public, to deal with two things: a matter affecting an employee and a contract which we will potentially be entering into. So can I have a mover and a seconder for the procedural motion? Councillor Jones moving, Councillor Kosovich seconding. So I'll call the vote on the procedural motion. Okay, the procedural motion's carried unanimously, so we'll clear the gallery. Okay, the meeting's open again, and I confirm that 2 motions were carried by council behind closed doors. On agenda item 13.1, council resolved as follows. The area of Lords Recreation Centre highlighted on the plan attached to this report is leased to Azure Entertainment Proprietary Limited, consistent with the terms contained in this report and otherwise on terms acceptable to the city. And the Chief Executive Officer is authorised to execute any documents, deeds and agreements necessary to give effect to this resolution. And on agenda item 13.2, it was resolved that in relation to the CEO Performance Review Panel, a panel of elected members is appointed to guide the Chief Executive Officer's 2023-2024 performance review, consisting of the following elected members: Mayor McMullen, Councillor Kosovich, Councillor Johnston and Councillor Burns. That was point 1. And subject to point 1, the panel will work with Steve Cartledge Consulting to prepare a report for Council at the July Ordinary Council meeting to consider the CEO performance review for 2023-2024 and recommend key performance indicators for 2024-2025. Okay, there's no further business, so I'll declare the Ordinary Council meeting closed at 8:36 p.m. Thank you, councillors, and thank you, staff.